Well, let me show you my persimmon trees. This one looks like I got one that's either ripe or pretty darn close to being ripe. And this is the coffee cake persimmon. It's supposed to taste like dadgum coffee cake. So we're gonna find out. And it's actually supposed to need a pollinator. It's supposed to need the chocolate persimmon as a pollinator. Well, my chocolate persimmon was decimated by the freeze and I didn't get any blooms on it. And it's just now started to grow back a little bit, and I'll show it to you in just a second. But this thing has produced persimmons without a pollinator, and it's supposed to have one. That's the only reason I got that chocolate persimmon, because it said this coffee cake needed it. I don't think it does, or this year was a fluke. I don't know. So this is my EUREKA persimmon tree, and it's only got probably less than a dozen persimmons. But this tree was beautiful, nice, last year, loaded down with persimmons, and then the freeze just tore it up. I have cut off a lot. You can see there where that one main scaffold limb came up and just died, and I cut it off and got a bunch of sprouts from it. But this tree was just really hurt during the 0 degrees in East Texas. So keep that in mind if you're looking for a persimmon, if you live in a cold area. All right, and by the way, the coffee cake persimmon, I didn't see any damage at all on the coffee cake. So let's go look at my other 3 persimmon trees. Now this is the chocolate persimmon, and it was about 10 or 12 feet tall last year in a container. I planted it here, and it just, when that freeze came, it tore it a new one. I mean, it really tore it up. I thought it was gonna be dead, but it started to branch out in the last couple of months, and I believe it's gonna make it. Unlike some of my persimmon trees, all the branches that are coming up are above the graft. So I'm saving it, I'm keeping this tree alive. I'll show you one that is producing limbs and growth at the graft or below the graft, and that's no bueno. So this is a FUYU persimmon tree, and it really got hurt during the freeze. I've got 1 or 2 little limbs coming up down there where the above the graft. If it's below the graft, this one here, this long one is below the graft, I need to cut that off. But anything above the graft I'm keeping, because that is a true FUYU. Below the graft, the rootstock is probably just an American persimmon, I think. So over here we have a giant FUYU persimmon, and again, tore up pretty good during the freeze, but I've got some pretty good growth down there above the graft. So all this is true FUYU growth and not graft growth, I guess you'd call it. But that's a giant FUYU. Same thing, gets a little bit bigger. And then we have this. This tree is several years old. The other 3 I just showed you, I bought in 2020. This one is probably 4 years old, 3 or 4 or 5 years old. And all that growth you see right there is from the rootstock. So nothing survived the freeze on this particular FUYU tree, persimmon tree. So that will be coming up out of the ground. I could keep it maybe just as a regular persimmon tree, an American persimmon, and would hope that it would fruit and pollinate my other persimmons. But I just don't think it's necessary. So I'll do some research on it, but I would imagine the old grapple's gonna come grab this, yank it up out of the ground, be done with it. So that's my persimmons. The main crop is on that little old dinky coffee cake persimmon tree that is not supposed to have any fruit on it because it doesn't have a pollinator. But something came along. It had a boyfriend somewhere because it's got a bunch of stuff on it. Made some fruit. All right. So, you know, pears are one of the more easy care trees, but persimmons, you don't have to do anything with persimmon. The skin on the persimmon is so thick, a bug won't come within 20 miles of it. Now, squirrels and stuff like that, a bird might peck it or something like that, but it is very, very thick skinned, and just probably the most carefree tree there is if you like persimmons. So we're gonna try these coffee cake. I think I'm just going to pick this one. I don't think they're even supposed to be ripe right now. But boy, that one is soft. It ain't pretty, but I believe she's ripe. So we're gonna take it in the house, and I'll let you know what it tastes like. Let my wife take a little old bite of it too. Persimmons. If you're not sure you like persimmons, and everybody's asking, what does a persimmon taste like? Well, a persimmon can be one of the most bitter, astringent things you've ever put in your mouth if you pick it at the wrong time, if it's an astringent persimmon. But one of the sweetest fruits I've ever put in my mouth was a persimmon. So persimmons are very, very good. If you don't know if you like persimmon, go down to some little hotsy-totsy, fancy-wancy store that sells a lot of exotic type things and see if they've got some persimmons, and make a note of what kind it is, and it may be something that you would want to grow. Persimmons, easy, easy care. I mean, keep them watered, a little fertilizer, and that's about it. Persimmon, get you one.